feared and feared through Killarney. Now I'm back to hitching with the wind. But if Mickey Flynn should ever find me, I'll throw me caution all behind me and square off on that son of a bitch again. He cracked open a river too, he beat me Sunday through and through, and so jiggle my unconscious frame. I won me healthy sheriff fights, well lucky son still had me life since Mickey Flynn beat me dumb and lame.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Chasing the Pennant Podcast. I'm your host, Shane, and I'm joined with Andrew. Andrew, interesting week for you. How are you?
I'm doing a lot better now. It was definitely an interesting week and, crazy. It was crazy. That's for sure. But I'm happy to be back and feeling pretty good now.
Good. Andrew, back in the Philadelphia area just for the holidays. Lovely to have you home. So first of all, you and I are pretty much the guys who are just going to pair up at this point. It certainly appears. Rob is the guy who is delivering all of your packages. So if you're angry that a package has not arrived, we ask you kindly to reach out to Radio _Rob, whatever the hell he is on Twitter, and voice your concerns with him. He is part of the problem. You hear that, Rob? You're part of the problem. If you just worked 5 days a week instead of 6 and you gave us 1 day a week and you joined some of these podcasts, we wouldn't be so angry at you right now. But then we have Biscuit and we have Sean, who recorded the last podcast, and Andrew, you and I listened to that before too. They kind of went into a bit of Dombrowski's history. We're going to kind of build off of that one now and kind of give some reactions to the first time that he's really spoke, both that Zoom press conference, if you will, as well as the Cataldi interview on WIP that was either the day after or several days after. But really was our first opportunity to sit there and hear a guy speak who knows how to do it. I mean, it's been 4 years. Middleton's horrendous PR team, never heard of it. McPhail is unbearable, and then Clintock's just a dweeb. Like, the guy is a total asshat. For what it is worth, Dombrowski, I felt like, really nailed both of these opportunities to kind of speak to the people of Philadelphia and to the media of Philadelphia. What were your early impressions of Dave Dombrowski as he finally got to speak to us about what he envisions for the Philadelphia Phillies in this organization?
Yeah, first, I think you hit it right on the nose there. Knows how to do it. I mean, we've been sitting here for the last however many years, listening to McPhail and Clintock speak, and every time they spoke, especially last season, I feel like we'd come on this podcast and make fun of them because something would come out that would be so ridiculously said that we would have to come on here and digest it because it was such badly worded and stuff. So now, like you said, we finally get a true baseball guy. He's been in the business forever. And whether he's going to end up fooling us with some of these words because he says them so smartly and we're going to just buy into everything he said because we're so desperate, or if he's actually going to mean what he said and we'll be able to really enjoy what's about to happen. And I think there's a lot of things to take away from it, but especially a couple things I'd like to dive into is the words retool instead of rebuild. I think that was key, and he's absolutely right. I mean, when you rebuild a roster, you're not looking at a roster with Aaron Nola, Rhys Hoskins, and Bryce Harper on it, etc., and Zach Wheeler. Now you get to retool, whether it's bring back JT, which I think we both absolutely want, or if it's add a guy like maybe bring in a Yadier Molina and then add a couple other pieces around the catcher spot, or a Jarlton Simmons and Jackie Bradley if they really want to buy into defense. Those three additions would be pretty big. So I think that is one of the biggest things is the word retool. But he also made sure not to just use the words, okay, stupid money. He made sure when he used the word retool, he made sure he said he's going to do it his own way. So that's something I really took into it as well, is he wasn't using these words to make fans happy. He used these words and then backed them up with other stuff he wanted to use. Like he said, retool, but we're going to have to do it in a way that it's going to be financially stable for this offseason and in the future. So like he's not coming out here and saying, okay, we're going to retool with all these top free agents in the market. He made sure he said, like, we're still going to be in a little bit of financial trouble, as we've known, but it might be add JT and then add a couple smaller free agents to retool and still be afloat with this roster next year. So I think that's something, and I'll let you speak on that point first before I continue about something I was excited about is he used those words, backed it up, and didn't make it seem too extreme. So I really like the word retool there and buy into that because I think the way he backed it up was huge.
Yeah, retool was honestly was the word that came immediately to me, and I said, oh, like the Philadelphia Flyers. Like the Flyers never went for an overhaul of a roster. They still had some really good core pieces there. Not great, but strong enough of a core that you could continue to build around. And the Flyers kill you with depth. Like they don't have a superstar on this hockey team. And the Phillies, we have Bryce Harper, yes. But the rest of these guys, they're very good, like the pieces that we're talking about here. So to kind of work that comparison there, it would absolutely behoove this organization to continue to pair the Bryce Harpers, the Rhys Hoskins, Zach Wheelers with a continued core of valuable, good pieces, serviceable major league pieces, and make the right decisions along the way that are not going to completely financially strap you. One thing that I took away that kind of works in line with what you were saying, Andrew, is that they have to work within their financial means of this season, and to know that the decisions that they make today do not impact negatively or cause to be a liability for future seasons. That's been the big thing with Dombrowski is he comes in, he gets you a winner. It is an exciting run with a Dombrowski-led team. He puts together really good cores, really valuable pieces, but he does lock up some not great contracts. And it appears that in his last run, or what we believe to be a last run before he then puts his hand into an expansion roster or an expansion city, he's learned from it. Now, we're going to have to continue to see if that makes sense. But right now, that retool word really makes sense for me. So this is a guy who isn't going to come in here and offer, $250 million for just anybody. If it happens to be JT, which right now we believe, and all the reports, come out that John Middleton is not exactly looking to break the bank here. He's not looking to spend unless it's for JT. So if JT can come in at a reasonable cost, I believe he's a Philadelphia Philly. However, if that happens, I don't know the likelihood that we see a completely revamped bullpen. And maybe that just isn't what this team needs right now when they are not making as much money as they potentially could be. And then maybe next season is the offseason where you continue that retool period. So I was really encouraged by those two things. And I think most encouraged to wrap that kind of up there. He sounds like a guy who gets how he is viewed. Someone who can get you to a potential World Series, but kind of leaves you in shambles. And where do you go from there? If this is his last opportunity, it sounds like he gets it. And maybe he cares about this Philadelphia Phillies organization beyond his tenure here.
Yeah, exactly. And that leads into the next thing I wanted to talk about. And real quick, I'll say this quote he had on it before, and he said, "I don't come in here thinking we have unlimited amount to spend. We have flexibility in finances, but I don't think it's an unlimited amount of funding. I won't expect the payroll to be the same amount as last year." So I think that right there shows what he's coming into. He understands it, and he knows where the city's at and where Middleton's at. And that's something I think was huge, obviously. I'm sure in the hiring process was Middleton was up front with him, and I think that quote shows it right there. And that leads into my next point as well, as you were saying, like he understands where he's at. And one thing I came away encouraged with too was when he was asked about his portrayal, like how his reputation is really with the trades and et cetera and all that and the contracts. And he came in and said, "I don't worry about it. I don't care about being on the cover of Baseball America or anything. Like if you look at my past history, it is what it is." And I think really that goes to show. And I think what's different about this than the McPhail hiring as well is his recent, like his history isn't just, oh, he won 20 years ago. Like he won 2 years ago. So the stuff he does in this game still works in this game. It's not like you brought in McPhail and he won 20 years ago almost, so his stuff is now in the past really, and he hasn't won recently. Well, Dombrowski's won 2 years ago, so his stuff continues to work in this league. And you look at his history, like If worst as he's going to do is leave us with a bad contract, I can live with that. Like, if he's going to come in and bring in superstars and find ways to win a World Series or two here before he leaves, and then he leaves us with bad contracts, that's almost the way it works, no matter what kind of champion you are. And you look around in sports, and that's the way it is. I mean, you look at the way we won in '08 and stuff in that run, and obviously we could have won more than just one if a couple bounces go here or there. And that left us with multiple bad contracts as well. So I'm not. If the worst thing he's going to do here is win us something and then leave us with a bad contract or two, I mean, I'm going to be okay with it in the time being, and we'll see where it takes us from there. Because, again, as he makes these trades and kind of brings in superstars, like, he makes the right trades, and he gives up, and yeah, he might give up a top prospect here, but if you look at his history as well, the guys he keeps on the roster are the guys that can still perform, and that's one thing I wanted to mention too, was what he said was when he was asked about all those trades, and he mentioned, like, well, if you look at the Red Sox roster, they got all the guys there to still win. They got the championship players. The guys that were traded aren't the championship players. And while, yeah, that might sound like a shot at some of the guys he traded, which it probably is, in reality, he is right, though. He traded the right guys and kept the right guys. And I think that's what's most encouraging about this is his track record still stands recently, too. And again, his history shows he does trade the right players. It's not like he's trading top-notch players.
He seems like a baseball guy just through and through. Like what we've dealt with in Matt Klentak specifically here in John Middleton, not so much Andy MacPhail. Andy MacPhail, for all of the things that he is, he's been involved in this game for a long time. I find it hard to say that he is not a baseball guy. The other two guys, John Middleton's an asshole. And then Matt Klentak, he's this nerd who believes he needs to be the smartest man in a room. At least that's the perception that I get of each of these people. Dombrowski, to me, I believe that he makes the moves that he makes because he seems to be passionate about the game of baseball as a whole. I don't think that you can sit there and throw your hand in for an expansion franchise and not be passionate about this sport. This is someone who's dedicated the majority of his adult life to the game of baseball, and he's been really, really good at it. And again, this is coming from someone who's very skeptical on the Dombrowski thing because I, unlike you, would prefer to not be left with horrendous contracts. I do not want to sell my soul for a single championship and then live in purgatory, or worse, legit hell for decades. Like, I just don't need that. I'm watching a Philadelphia Eagles team right now just implode the city of Philadelphia, after just royally screwing up what should have been so easy to maintain. I don't want that here in Philadelphia for the Phillies. I want to make sure that he takes the things that really has worked at each one of his stops prior to now here in Philadelphia. And again, he mentions this in those interviews. He's learned from those things. And while the aggression may still be there when the financial means are there to meet it as well, he's going to have to put an extra layer of thought behind how he leaves this place. And I respect that. So I'm not as down on him as I was 2 weeks ago. I'm certainly not as high as you have been on the Twitter machine out there. But it's easy to understand how this guy has been involved in the game of baseball. And I am. Look, I'm excited to see and hear. Like, I'm excited anytime he takes a microphone at this point. From those two conversations, I am excited to hear Dave Dombrowski speak. I just want to hear a baseball guy talk baseball. And that's what you're going to get from him.
Yeah, I think a couple things there, and again, why I'm so excited for it is one, what we've been stuck with. Like, I'm going to be honest, like, just the idea of having him here over Klentak and MacPhail makes me that much more excited just because it gives me hope. Like, whether it's going to be something, like, it gives me hope on whether he goes out and sign, like, even like the lesser name guys, I got more hope for. Like even if he does go sign out a guy to a minimum contract, like I got a feeling he knows which minimum guy to go after more than the last group, and that's why I feel it's such a good move too. Along with, I don't know, I feel even the teams that go on to win 2 or 3 in the span of 6 years, I feel like he's. I just feel like that's the way the games are now. Like, when you win 1 or 2, but when your time is up, like, you are stuck with bad contracts just because there are always those guys that you do sign. And
sure, but how many of these cities, like Philadelphia is a major, major market. Like, to me, bad contracts don't exist in Philadelphia, or shouldn't exist in Philadelphia Phillies. Who cares? Like, theoretically, John Middleton and this stupid money fat wallet self of his, the TV money as well, like, bad contracts should not have the implications here that they have elsewhere. They just shouldn't. And that's one thing and it kind of contradicts what I just said. Maybe you don't fear quite as much in a city like Philadelphia. The problem is Middleton seems to be very, very aware of his financial means and investments within this organization, because he's got literally nothing else in his life. And that's tough.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And I guess it does depend on who's running it. And like you said, if you're a bigger market, there really shouldn't be a bad contract, because you're going to be able to pay it off anyway, really. But like, you see, and that's what makes veterans so hard to trade sometimes, is like when their time's up in one city after they've won or made their run, like you see those big contracts, and that makes it hard to move on from them, just because you can't move that kind of contract. And I mean, we'll see what happens, but like you said, I think he's learned. He's been out of the game for a year now. Obviously, a very odd season he missed. And I think hopefully it's not just words, and he did learn from it, and I think he might have. But we'll see what it brings us. But my big thing with him as well, I think, is the way it goes to kind of see how like other teams are making those same contracts and stuff. Like you had the Mookie Betts deal and all that. So those deals are still happening around the league, and that's something I think he's gonna. I don't know. That's something that's going to be interesting, because at some point, whether it's like spring training when he sees this roster at the deadline, he's going to want to make a big splash. And I'm really curious how that's going to be handled in-house. Because, again, those words still say, okay, I'm going to, like you said, be aggressive at some point, stay, like, and is it going to be, it's like, say we're in first place by a game at the deadline. Like, he doesn't seem like a guy who's going to sit on his hands. Like, he's going to be more aggressive. Is he going to be able to argue Middleton in that case, or is he going to lose the battle and you're going to have to wait till the end of the year? So I am interested with some of those words, because I do think that's an important thing to address too, is some of the things he spoke about was like he is going to try to keep that. So I am curious if it will cause some tension in-house at some point.
Look, there's a strong possibility, and I think that's a good transition into some of these next points here. It's been very quiet on the Philadelphia Phillies front at this point since being introduced, which is very much so unlike a Dave Dombrowski led off season. It truly just, especially a first season. Now, again, this is a season like no other. We're recovering from the strangest season of baseball in the history of the game. But the relationship in-house with Middleton and with Dombrowski, I think this is such a different thing. John Middleton has been overly involved, and I think that has truly been to the detriment of how people view the Philadelphia Phillies organization as a whole right now. I do not think that he is a smart man in the game of baseball. I don't think that he's a smart businessman at this point either. And he certainly doesn't understand people. So I don't really know what the hell he's here for, outside of his potential money. But he became overly involved when he had the opportunity to get the face of the game of baseball in Bryce Harper. From that point on, Matt Klentak's role was diminished. Andy McPhail, I don't really know as a president what he brought or didn't bring to this city and to this organization. The two of those guys really failed to exist in any meaningful manner since the Bryce Harper signing. It was more so, what will John Middleton let me do? What is my role today under John Middleton? What is my role today under Andy McPhail? And I think a big part of it is the lack of success in this so-called quickest rebuild in the history of baseball, which, by the way, still the only team that has ever failed to adequately rebuild into a championship caliber baseball team. Great job, Philadelphia. But now you got a guy in here who, again, is dedicated the majority of his adult life to the game of baseball, a guy who is extremely passionate about this sport and continuing this sport's legacy in cities beyond cities that currently house the game. I do believe that Dave Dombrowski can be, big dick in a room, for lack of a better phrase, that if he wants something done, he will go in there and sell that to Middleton in a way that Middleton has to say yes. I do believe the first thing that may happen when it happens will be the JT thing. Now, what happens beyond that? That might be a more difficult thing. That may be we may be making moves at the margins again. Maybe they're just the right moves as opposed to a Vargas signing midway through the year so that I can watch him not win a single start in a Phillies uniform. But it's been quiet again since the introduction of Dombrowski. And you talked earlier, about is he going to want to sit here and not make a splash if we're a game out? Forgetting John Middleton for a moment, do you, Andrew, sit there and have the trust that he will make the correct moves for this franchise, not just to win today, but to sustain winning through the duration of his 4-year tenure here in Philadelphia and then beyond that? Do you believe that there's a splash like a Lindor splash or a Nolan Arenado splash or a Trevor Bauer signing, something big to be made that can kind of come out here? Do you trust him to get this done and get this done in a way that breeds continued success?
Yes, I really do. And again, it's more because of it recently has worked too. It's not him coming in with track record from 20 years ago. And I think that's my biggest thing. And yeah, I understand Boston had a down year, but if you look at it, they're still set up for success. Like they still got, Rafael Devers was still noted as one of the best third base prospects, if not the best, and they still left him on the table. They still have him. One of the biggest things last year is they were so injury driven as well. So, they were missing their ace and Chris Sale, and so I think that was the big thing. My big thing, at least, is that Red Sox team's still set up for success. They still have a Xander Bogaerts. They still have a Rafael Devers. They still have Chris Sale. They still have all those guys that can still give them success with a piece or two maybe this offseason. So that record and the guys I like still on that team shows me he can still come in. And I think, it might take a Bryson Stott, which I know some people are going to be upset with, but if it brings us a Francisco Lindor or something like that, I'm going to be okay with it.
I'll pack his bags for him.
So again, I think he can make that trade with, say, Bryson Stott and whatever other guys you want to throw in for a Francisco Lindor, but he's going to keep Alec Bohm. So then you're going to be looking at Alec Bohm, Francisco Lindor, whatever you want to throw at second, Kingery, Segura, and then Hoskins. And that's going to set you up very well because I think, again, if he goes out and signs a Jackie Bradley Jr. to fill center, and you're looking at McCutchen, Bradley, Harper, Bohm, Lindor, that's set up for success right there. Or I got confidence in I'm a big Rhys Hoskins guy, but like a trade I could see him doing, honestly, with Blake Snell being on the market now, is I could see him moving Hoskins and somebody else for Blake Snell. And yeah, I love Hoskins, but I have to understand that that's the right baseball trade if you're getting Blake Snell there with the ability to move a guy like Alec Bohm the first. So I think that there creates that, and yeah, I have a lot of confidence in him to be able to do that and still have success here for the future once he is gone.
So I don't know that I have. I think now I'm going to pair this with my lack of trust in John Middleton. I do believe that there could be a move to be made for a guy like Lindor that would theoretically work, but do I trust and believe after what we've seen in just an absolute, just really butchered situation with JT? Do I believe that John Middleton will sit there and allow him to then offer the contract to a guy like Francisco Lindor that says, hey, you're here for the next 5 years, you're here for the next 8 years? I don't know that I trust John Middleton to allow Dombrowski to do it. I know we just talked about Dombrowski having that, big dick in the room mentality of walking in and saying, I don't care if you don't think you have the money, find it. But until that marriage truly works, and until I see that first big move that there is complete just cohesion between the two of them and this process works, I'm going to have doubts because I cannot trust John Middleton, and I'm still skeptical as a whole on a Dave Dombrowski.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. But and I guess another thing all depends on what type of season they're going to have this year. Will also play a factor, and also have the ability of how much money this team's going to make this season, whether we have fans or not, will also decide. So there's a lot to go into it. And I think the big person here is, like you said, it's going to come down to Middleton. And that's the other factor is you bring up Middleton, which is a great point, because he came out and said after the season, if I would have known the situation with JT's like this, I wouldn't have given up Sixto Sanchez. So now, you're right, we could be put in the same type of situation now. And is Middleton not going to allow Dave to make that kind of trade now just because he like, if he truly meant what he said, what was that, 4 months ago now, or no, I guess it's been 3 months ago now. Like, if he truly meant what he said, you're probably not going to allow that trade to go through. If you actually meant that, is I'm not going to give up a generational talent like that for maybe a quote unquote rental piece. So it is going to probably come down to Middleton when it's all said and done.
Yeah, and I think it's one of the most difficult things about having just a single majority owner there, and a guy who's really truly pulling the strings. He has nothing else. Like so many other people, whether they are invested in restaurants or whatever the hell else they may be invested in, they have other streams of revenue. The lost income doesn't hit you. I mean, granted, and this isn't, I still don't believe anyone truly lost money. I feel like you're not going to make a couple $100 million this year or whatever you believed you were going to make. And it's just it's a weird thing to sit here and look at. So we'll kind of wrap up with that exact topic that you kind of brought in there, Andrew. What do you believe owners kind of look at this 2020 season as? Obviously, last season was the way that they were the last to shut down. They were the last to sit there and say, sure, we're going to give this thing a go. They had the shortest, most awkward and impacted season. It was handled about as poorly as you could possibly handle it, up and down. That's players, that's owners, and that's just the Major League Baseball's front office as a whole. Not great. Entering in here, knowing you're not going to have fans, at least for what first? I mean, probably through August at this point. Like, is there a possibility of fans for a September run and playoffs? Maybe. We don't know what's going on. But at this point, it seems pretty certain you're not going to have fans for the majority of the season. Is this going to change the likelihood of how owners view this season and moves to be made this season? And is it going to change the way that potential free agents value themselves and what they're going to do and what they're going to accept? Are you going to see guys like Didi Gregorius say, shit, I bet on myself and had a really nice season and I'm still getting screwed? I don't know what I'm going to take right now. What do you think is going to happen when it comes down to this particular season and entering another collective bargaining discussion after this season? I just fear that baseball as a whole, where I guess what I'm trying to get at, is just destined for another really, really ugly negotiation. How do you kind of view this season setting up in terms of what the owners are looking at getting out of it?
I think they're looking at, I mean, if they're smart, I think they have to look at something similar to last year, honestly, at this point. Like you said, you're probably going to go in at least a month or two of the season, if not more, without fans. So you're, like, I don't really want to hear anything next year about, oh, look at all the money we lost. Because, okay, I get it. You can use that excuse for something first time, but, like, if you're doing your job right now, you're preparing this offseason for something similar to last season. And that goes, and I'm not trying to sound rude on it. I'm just saying, like, you had the experience now. You had it happen to you last year. You know how much money, whether we will never know. Like, they're going to come out and throw numbers at us and try to get us to buy them. So we'll never know how much money they actually lost throughout the season, if not gained, whatever. We don't know. And that's where they should know by now, though. Like, they calculated what they got last year compared to a normal season, and you're going to have that same thing happen next year. And while I don't think we're going to be able to play a full season, especially with their news coming out that they're going to, I forget if it's definite or probably going to wait for the vaccine to come out. So yeah, it's going to be pretty hard to play a full season at this point. So I think they'll get more than 60 in like last year, but I think at this point to play a full 162 is going to be pretty tough. knowing that news with the vaccine coming out, because he knows when all the players are going to be able to get it and everything. And I'm not saying it's wrong to wait. I think it's a good idea. It's just you don't know when it's going to happen and how that's going to impact fans as well. So in that sense, you don't know. But obviously, again, you know how much money you lost, and you know how to prepare that for this year. So I think that's huge. As the owners as a whole, and I know it's tough to say because in a way you're helping out other teams, but I think they got to kind of work together and kind of talk to each other and figure things out through that sense. Meaning, if you look at other sports, let's go with the NFL right now because they're trying to finish their season, and you look at, okay, the Eagles, I think, ended up having fans in 1, maybe 2 home games, but outside of that, they started without it. Now they don't have fans again. But you look at Dallas games, and they still have fans. So you're going to still have all those pure rules from government to government, from state to state, where you're going to have some. And look at the 49ers. They can't even play in their own stadium right now because of those rules. So they had to move to Arizona for the time being. So I think you could be looking at a situation like that. And then you look at other sports like NBA. The NBA who's starting up, we're recording this on Monday night. They're going to start up Tuesday night. And you're going to have those same rules where you're going to have some teams, I think, have fans and some not. So you look around other sports, the MLB, everyone was saying how lucky the NFL was last year at this point, where they got to look around and see what everybody's doing. Right now, it's the MLB's turn. And whether you trust Rob Manfred to do this or not, that's another question. No. But the MLB is the lucky one now. They get to look around and see, okay, how is the vaccine going to impact the NBA and the NHL? And then the NFL playoffs, and then how can we use this as we start up our season? So that's where the MLB and the owners benefit right now, is they get to look around to everybody else and see what happens. And I'm with you. I don't think I trust them to, but they do have that. That is right now a side where you can say, okay, they have the benefit compared to other sports right now, and that's something from Ron Manfred and to owner. They got to figure out how to get it done themselves. And as a fan, you can only hope that works. And I think the players union is going to be behind the whole vaccine thing. So I think that's going to be a plus. Now, what's going to happen after that's the real question.
Certainly in for another interesting continued offseason here, and then an interesting, probably not full 162 game season here for Major League Baseball. We'll continue to bring different stories and different thoughts to you, as will the rest of our group. I also forgot to mention Boric earlier, your other partner from one of your other 37 podcasts that you host, Andrew. Boric, I didn't have anything sarcastic or odd to say about you. You just keep killing it over there in your hockey site, man. You're doing well for yourself. But why don't you tell people where they can find any of your podcasts or all of your podcasts and anywhere that you may write?
All right, so yeah, my personal Twitter is AJ_Santangelo. Other podcasts, Philly Sports Now. You can find us at Philly Sports _now. Is a podcast I do with my brother, all Philadelphia sports related. As you mentioned, I do one with Bork as well, and that's True Philadelphian Sportcast podcast. You can find that on his YouTube page, which says same thing, True_Philly Sportcast. And then also Pub Sports Radio, I write for them, along with do a Tuesday night baseball show at 5:15 Central, 6:15 Eastern Time with a friend from there. So that's Pub Sports Baseball, or Pub Sports Radio is their Twitter.
Andrew and I will also hopefully be putting together a 76ers podcast, and then hopefully we'll bring back an old CTP member in Scott. Scott was a favorite of a lot of our listeners too, bringing an LA side of things over there, even though he is still claiming to have East Coast grit. Hopefully we have that coming out, well, hopefully tomorrow night. Or, well, I guess tonight when you guys listen to it, Tuesday night. And then I have started a new show, a new non-sports related show. It's crazy, I know. Every one of my podcast ventures in the first 4 years or 3 years of me doing this has been Philadelphia sports. I have gotten fatter. I have gotten more bags under my eyes. I've gotten more stressed, and my hair is, well, it's not thinning, but it certainly looks like crap. And that is specifically because I am only talking about Philadelphia Phillies sports. So we thought it was important to sit here and give you something a little bit different. It's called The Gentleman Podcast. We have a website as well. It is thegentlemanpodcast.blog. It's a WordPress page. We have different articles. We have food recipes up right now. And then the show itself is just called The Gentleman Podcast. We'll have a link on the Twitter account, which is just Gentleman Podcast. Outside of that, we're all CTP here. We're all chasing a pennant. We're all now having to believe in Dave Dombrowski and John Middleton's wallet. May God bless you all through this journey of being a Philadelphia Phillies fan. Everybody take care. We'll see you guys next week.
A fighting man I used to be, revered and feared through Killarney. Now I'm back to hitching with the wind. But if Mickey Flynn should ever find me, I'll throw me caution all behind me and square off on that son of a bitch again. He cracked open a river too, he beat me Sunday through and through, and such over my unconscious frame. I won me healthy sheriff fights, well lucky son still had me life since Mickey Flynn beat me dumb and lame.